Welcome to Feature Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram, I'm Director of Product Marketing in our Cloud Provider Business Unit. And today I'm joined by Jay. Welcome, Jay. Thanks for coming on board. Do you want to just give yourself a brief introduction to people?
Sure. Thanks, Guy. Hello, everyone. My name is Jekishan Tayal, and I am a Senior Technical Product Marketing Manager here with VMware. I basically deal with the entire VCD portfolio and Cloud Data Service portfolio in the marketing team. So yeah, today we will discuss all about what's new with the VCD 10.4 release.
Yeah, 10.4. Excellent. Been a little while in the making this one. And 10.4 contains quite a few cool features and functions, but it's kind of prepping the way for what's coming with things like container service extension, and there's a few enhancements coming after 10.4. So I think we got CSE 3.4.1. 4.0. And then also we'll have Terraform launching as
3.7.
Roughly around the same time as VCD. Okay, so let's dive into it, Jay. Let's see what's in 10.4.
Sure. So what we'll do now is we'll discuss what's new in 10.4 release, and then wherever possible, I'll demo the feature in the lab, and wherever the feature is too complex to be demoed or it takes time, I'll talk about it from the slide itself. So with VCD, right, we have quite a few enhancements and quite a few features, which is new features. So basically, we have divided the release or the feature into categories where we talk about the networking and security. Then we categorize them into storage and catalog. And there are a couple of miscellaneous features which have been enhanced and or introduced. We'll talk about them. And like Guy mentioned, we will also talk about the extensibility, what's coming in. And then we quickly look at the interop and upgrade best practice. All right. So from a release perspective, these are the features and enhancements which we have with this release. So like I mentioned, we have categorized them into networking and security, operational improvements, and then core platform. So we look at most of it one by one, and then let's understand what they talk about or what they actually define within VCD 10.4. So to start with, we will have a major enhancement with the container service extension, wherein we will release the mostly awaited version, which is 4.0. Why? Because with this release of the CSE container extension, we will start supporting the entire Tanzu portfolio, whichever VCD supports, right? The only thing you have to remember that this release of CSE 4.0 is not immediate along, or it's not along with VCD 10.4 release, but after a couple of weeks or a month. Okay, so this feature, this release of CSE 4.0 will bring in a lot of features. For example, like you'll be able to deploy multi-node control plane clusters. You'll have a lot of pre-packaged Tanzu applications and packages, and then of course the main thing which is the talk about this feature is the GPU support. It will support the NVIDIA GPU grid card, and then with the VCD Tanzu with the CSC container and Tanzu Kubernetes grid multi-cloud, we will support the GPU feature. And there's a small update which will come a couple of weeks after VCD 10.4 release, which is the CSE CSE version 3.1.4. We are releasing this specific version of CSE to support VCD 10.4 until we have CSE 4.0, which is called the CSE.next. So it will have a couple of bug fixes, and of course, main reason is for it to be compatible with VCD 10.4 until we have CSE 4.0 released.
Okay, so from a timeline perspective, then we got CSE 3.1. I guess 3 at the moment.
Yes.
We're now releasing VCD 10.4, which means you have to upgrade to CSE 3.1.4 to enable you to use CSE with 10.4. And then later on, second half this year, a couple of months time, hopefully, we'll be producing this CSE.next, which is 4.0. Got it.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, and then let's look at the technical updates. So first we'll begin with networking. With networking, we have two categories. of releases. One is that with the NSXT gateway, we now support static routes. It was not possible until the current version, or rather until the previous version 10.3.3. So we will support static routes. And then there are quite a few enhancements with regards to NSX load balancer, how it is licensed. So we'll talk about all those stuff. So what I'll do quickly is I will take you through these features in the lab and showcase where they exactly are located and how to configure them. And then while I'm on the lab screen, I'll talk about the licensing stuff of NSX ALB and other parameters. All right. So from a lab's perspective, I'm here in the VCD 10.4 lab, and I will log into the provider portal as an administrator. And then the feature we will talk about now is the static routes feature, now available under the edge gateways. So static routes can be configured as a provider or as an org admin from the tenant portal, both ways. And the main purpose of this feature to be introduced is that now we can control manually where our packets must route. This was not possible before. Previously, we had to depend on the dynamic routing, but now we can control where our packets will route. So what I'll do it to mostly the edge gateway services, right, are configured by the org admin from the tenant portal. So, or rather, some features are configured by system admin and some are by org admin. So I'll navigate to the tenant portal and show you from there how the feature looks like and where it is really located, right? So this is the tenant portal of the Cloud Director cell. And so what we do is we navigate to the networking section, and from there we navigate to edge gateways. And I have one edge gateway in my lab environment. And if you scroll at the bottom around the routing feature, you see here, we have something called as static routing. So this was not available until the previous release. So we do have a static route which can be configured. So if you have the permission to edit or configure the edge gateway, if you click on new, you can define your static route and also provide which hops you want to have the packet route through. So this is a new feature which is really useful, wherein you want a controlled environment and you know where your packet must be transferred. For example, you want to transfer the network packets to a hop where it is kind of where the security is being checked, it is kind of been spoofed and everything, right? So you want to control that, look at the thing, and then you can then route the traffic as you want it.
Yeah.
Now, this is all about static routing. The next thing we'll talk about is the NSX ALB enhancements. There are quite a few enhancements, and the major one is how NSX ALB is now licensed. And up until, let's say, the last or the previous release, NSX ALB was always licensed in two variants. One was basic and one was standard. Sorry, one was basic and one was enterprise. But now NSX ALB will only be licensed in an enterprise fashion. Now you might ask me a question, then how do we control what feature VMware Cloud Director will showcase to the customers? So from a VCD perspective, we have introduced something called as feature set. Okay. This feature set is defined now as standard and as premium. So whichever VCD tenants are tagged with a standard premium set will get standard features of NSX ALB, and whichever tenants of VCD are tagged as a premium feature set will get all the features of NSX ALB. So this is how we control and decide on what features or how the tenant will be built from an NSX ALB perspective, from a VCD perspective. All right. So first thing, as a provider portal, I am on the provider page. And if I navigate to the controllers page, right, or the controller section, previously it used to display us the licensing type, but now we have taken that off because it's standard now, because from NSX ALB, it's always enterprise. How we control within VCD is what we worry about now, right? And if I look at the NSXT cloud, these are as it is. And the service engine group, you see here, feature set. So when a provider is defining the service engine group for a tenant is when they decide whether the tenant will have a standard feature set or a premium feature set. For example, if I click add.
And just to be clear here, Jackson, the that feature set is a exposed capability of the underlying ALB controllers, which are licensed for enterprise by default, but the provider doesn't pay for enterprise for any of it unless they select kind of the premium set here.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but one thing to understand, the feature set tag, I would say that this is a tag which we define from a VCD perspective. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you add a service engine group, for example, this is where you define whether the tenant for whom the service engine group is being created will be under a standard feature set or a premium feature set. Okay. So this is one major enhancement, I would say. Why? Because previously there were a couple of NSX V features which were supported by basic license. Now, since we are migrating completely towards NSX T, some of the features fall under the premium feature of the NSX load balancer.
Yeah.
So to offset that, we are coming up with this solution wherein whatever used to function before with the basic license with NSX V will now function with VMware Cloud Director and NSX T. So that's the logic of having this feature set. And like you said, like you mentioned, Guy, we do not have to mandatorily force the tenants to go ahead and procure or pay for an enterprise license for NSX ALB from a cost perspective. Yeah. So this is from
Jay,
a perspective. Yes.
Sorry, are those features now, are they also available to be configured in the VCD UI?
Yes. So
okay.
I'll show you now. So some of the features which were only possible previously when you were an enterprise tagged customer or tenant, now those can also function with a standard, which is, let's call it basic for understanding. Standard tag customers can also configure those features now. Yes.
Right.
So now I'm navigating back to the tenant portal. Okay. And from a tenant portal perspective, obviously I will see all of the NSX load balancing details, configuration details under the edge gateway. So if you look at the load balancing section, I have all of these features. So if I click general settings, again, we defined the feature set at the gateway level as well for the tenant. So for example, this edge gateway, I define whether the feature set is standard or premium. So if I set to standard, the tenant can see, let's say, X amount of features. If I set to premium, they can see all the features depending on how it is categorized. So one thing is this, and the other enhancement is with regards to IPv6 support, which was not the case before. One thing you have to understand, for IPv6 to work with VCD, you have to enable the Slack or the DHCP feature on the edge gateway. Okay. And so for example, if I take you to the service engine groups and if I click add, okay, not service engine group, let me take you to the virtual services basically. And if I click add, you see here now I have the option to add IPv6. This was not the case before. One thing is this. Second thing, now we also support having IPv6 machines backed as your pool member, meaning a pool member can now have virtual machines with IPv4 or only IPv6 or a combination of IPv4 and IPv6. For example, if I click add here now, and let's say if I give test, and if I add members, obviously these are not real members. I'm just showing it for the demo. If I give IP address, let's say 10.10.10.1, and I can add another one, which could be your IPv6. For example,
now you're going to have to type out the IPv6. double colon there.
1 minute, it takes it. A.B.C. It usually takes it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you need a valid address.
Right. I don't have a valid address right now, so that's why. But to understand this feature, yes, now we can have pool members backed by both IPv6 and IPv4. So it's a great change, wherein considering people are now moving towards IPv6, so they'll have a mixed workload environment. So having this is a very good thing for them. So this is the change all about IPv6. Just make sure that the DHCP or the Slack feature is enabled, and then this IPv6 will function. And
So this is
yeah,
just to kind of summarize on this then. So the IPv6 is, is great. We've been asking for it for a long time. So very happy to see that in there. But the real difference here, I think, is for service providers to start monetizing those different levels of advanced load balancing services.
Right.
With the standard and the premium, that now offers the service provider like real self-service instead of it being a managed service and an NSX controller level,
right?
Self-service in the UI and upsell all these different capabilities.
Absolutely right. You're right. So that way we'll have, obviously it will be like you mentioned, some services now can be controlled by the tenant itself, and some services will be obviously be a managed service, which is by the provider. So yeah, that really helps in that as well.
Okay.
And so we have looked at IPv6. Now the other enhancement we have made with the NSX ALB with VCD is that now we support multiple services in the same virtual service. For example, if I click on the virtual service now, previously you could only add one port or a one service type under a virtual service. Okay, previously this was a feature of an enterprise customer.
Okay.
Yeah. But now it is supported with standard. So when I say multiple, I can have one for port 80 for HTTP, one for port, let's say 81, and one for 82. It supports this thing with your standard feature set. So this is another enhancement we have made from a supportability perspective based on the feature set or licenses.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so these are some of the NSX ALB enhancement with VCD, which are the major ones, I would say. And to talk about a few more, which is overlapping VIP IP on existing subnets. This was not possible before, and now it means that a tenant user can now have a VIP in the existing organization VDC network subnet. It was not the case before, so that's possible. And the other enhancement is about the multiple services being configured with the same VIP. Previously, a single VIP could only be tagged to one services, but now the same VIP can be tagged to multiple services in the background. Okay, so this is another enhancement which we are doing with NSX ALB. So these are the enhancements we have come up with in VC 10.4 from a networking perspective. All right, so one is static pool, static routing, and then other one is all of the NSX ALB enhancement with VCD. Cool.
Yeah, the static routing one is an interesting one. I mean, usually people start off with static routing because it's the easiest thing to do.
Exactly.
Whereas we started off with dynamic routing protocols, and we've gone and retrofitted static routing.
Right. So that's actually a very that'll be one of the most on-demand feature which will be used by the providers and the tenants, because like you mentioned, yes, of course, I would learn things or configure things first with static routing, see how things work, and then I do all the dynamic stuff. So it was a long ask, but finally we have it. Yeah. So it's good to have that.
Yeah, it's just got a lot easier for everyone. Good.
True, I agree. All right, then let's now look at the feature enhancements from a storage and catalog perspective. All right, so what I'll do now is I'll discuss about storage. So we have two categories here, one for storage and one for catalog. So from a storage perspective, we have two features which are kind of enhanced very well. One is the display of IOPS limit and VM disk and name disk view from a tenant portal or a provider portal. It was not the case before. I will demo that in the lab. And from a storage perspective, we have made major enhancement and major, what I would say, the feature works much better right now from an SDRS support perspective. I'll explain that in detail, but that is something I cannot show in the lab because it's in the background. It's a background feature, but it is important for the providers or the tenant administrator to understand what it is. And from a catalog perspective, we have, of course, made a major breakthrough in now finally showing what's really happening behind the scene when a sync is happening between a publisher and a subscriber. Previously, it was always stuck at 1% and we do not know what's happening, but now we show every step, what percentage, what file has been copied, etc. So I'll demo that in the lab as well. And then the other one is the fast cross VC catalog instantiation with shared storage, which is again a major enhancement, which is not seen in the front end, but from the back end and resource consumption perspective, it's a major breakthrough. Okay.
Yeah.
So I will first talk about the bottom two features, which is VMware Cloud Director SDRS and Fast Cross VC, because I have to talk about them from the slides. So, and then I'll demo the rest too from the lab. So from a SDRS support perspective, right, I'll give you the problem statement first, and then you'll understand why this is better. The problem statement was because mainly the problem statement was before. Let's say now my storage policy is backed by SDRS cluster, okay? And SDRS cluster has 3 data stores, for example. Now, when VCD makes a request to place a VM on the SDRS cluster, and imagine this VCD machine has 3 or 4 disks, okay? What is to happen previously? All the 4 disks will go and sit in one of the data stores and not be balanced. That's one problem statement. Second, let's say now I have my SDRS cluster with, let's say, 30 GB of free storage, entire SDRS cluster. Now, VCD, let's say from VCD, I have requested for 15 GB of virtual machine to be spun up. Okay. Let's say 20 GB to make it more easy. So I'm creating a 20 GB VM from VCD to be spun up. So what will happen now? VCD will say, VC, hey, create this VM for me on SDRS cluster. VC will say, okay. Previously, what used to happen? Let's say if I spin up another 20 GB VM at the same time, VC will take the request because the updates were not happening very often. But now, once I am commanding vCenter to spin up a 20 GB VM on the SDRS cluster, that 20 GB is kind of blocked for some time limit. That means the VC will tell VCD that, okay, you have given me a request to create a 20 GB VM. I'm reserving this 20 GB for X amount of time. What is the X amount of time? That is something you define from a VCD perspective. It could be 5 minutes, could be 10 minutes, could be 15 minutes. So 3 things. All the disks sitting in one data store, not getting balanced. And then VC not giving real storage updates to VCD, and the X amount of time, which we can now configure from VCD, right? What we have fixed, all of these, what we discussed. But to get this thing working the way we want VCD to, the way we want this to function is, one important thing is, from an SDRS cluster perspective, you have to make a couple of changes from a configuration perspective. Very simple. What are those? One, you have to make sure that the utilized space, which is this one, usually what happens as an admin, right? You never set the utilized space to 100%. You always keep 10% buffer. But we recommend make it to 100% because VCD can see the real update of actually how much space it is having, and it can take a decision accordingly. That's one recommendation. Second, very, very important, uncheck keep VM decays together by default. That will help balance the single VM multiple disks across multiple data stores. So in that way, it will do a proper scheduling of the storage space. And the third one, which is one of the cool things they've introduced, we have a advanced option which is called vRAN initial placement. We set that to 1. Now what's that? Previously, let's say from a VCD perspective, I say VC, hey, create this VM on this SDRS. So what VC will do, hey VCD, I have this option for you, this option for you, this option for you, you decide. So VCD will take time to decide. So there's a delay in the actual placement. But now what with this tag, what will happen? VC will give you one best option. You have no option to choose. You have to go ahead and place it. So what's the advantage of this? We save a lot of time from the initial placement time, basically. So even if it's 5 seconds, 10 seconds, for example, I'm saying, you save that time and think of it in a larger environment where you have so many things happening in the background, right? So VC will just give you one update or one option. You have this one and this is the best. And go ahead and start placing your VM on the VC SDRS cluster. So these are the things which you have to make changes on the SDRS configuration perspective. Not a rocket science thing, but it can happen on the fly. And then what will happen, like I mentioned, problem statement 1, if I have multiple disks in a VCD VM, and if I place that, maybe disk 1 will go to data store 1, disk 2 will go to data store 2, and disk 3 will go to the other data store. So it will be balanced very well. And VC will now update VCD very often, that this is the space I have, this is the space I have, this is the space I have left at so and so time. Now, what about the real-time update? For example, like I mentioned, the 20 GB VM, 20 GB VM, and 30 GB free space, right? So let's say now I have defined 10 minutes of time from VCD, that, okay, wait for 10 minutes for the time, for the size of the storage I'm requesting to reserve when the VM is placed. 3 conditions now for that. First condition, if the virtual machine gets created within the 10 minutes time, VC will update VCD, I'm done, and I'm releasing the 10 GB of space which you had blocked for me. 2, if the virtual machine creation fails within that time, VC will still update VCD. Okay, the creation failed, you have this free space again for you. 3, right. If the VCD VM takes more than the defined time to create, in that case, what will happen? VC will wait for the 10 minutes. For example, if we have defined 10 minutes, VC will release that time reservation or the storage reservation after 10 minutes. So these are the conditions we have defined in the background in the code. So with this, VCD can place VMs in a better way. It can utilize the storage in a better way, and it can save a lot of time for initial placement of the virtual machines. So not a feature you see really in the front end from a VCD page, but from a vCenter server, if you have multiple disk VM, you will see that disk is getting divided in different data stores. And of course, you would see those fraction of seconds improvement. But when you do the larger monitoring thing, you would see a lot of major differences in how the disk is utilized, how much time it's taking, and stuff like that. Yeah.
So better balancing then overall.
Any day.
Better scheduling of the resources. But also, this is going to really help where you may have had disk provisioning errors before.
Correct.
And not understood why, right? Because of space requirements and things like that. So a lot more control.
Good point. So like you mentioned previously, let's say I've already spun up a 20 GB VM in a 30 GB free space, and I'm spinning up another 20 GB VM. It will take the task and fail at a later stage.
Yeah.
So that's and cleanup is not easy anywhere, right? So we avoid those things as well.
Brilliant.
Super. So this is the SDRS improvement, and then this is the fast cross VC instantiation with shared storage. An amazing feature which is kind of in function now. Meaning, earlier what used to happen? Let's say I have 2 organizations or 2 tenants. Imagine tenant A, tenant B, right? Tenant A backed by vCenter A, tenant B backed by vCenter B. Now, what if they want to share catalogs in between them, right? What was the only option we had? Let's say if I instantiate one of the templates from tenant A to tenant B, what used to happen in the background? Since there are two separate vCenter servers, so in the vCenter A, OVF export used to happen, network copy, then in VCB, OVF import used to happen, and then the VM used to get deployed on the destination site. Heavy task, heavy consumption of resources, heavy consumption of time. But now what we have done, have a shared storage between both the vCenters, which are backing separate tenants. Okay. So what will happen in this way? Now, for example, I have my template in tenant A, which is backed by vCenter A. That template is sitting in the shared storage, NFS shared storage, right? Now, let's say I'm instantiating the template from this site to this site. Previously, what used to happen? Import of OVF, export of OVF, blah, blah, blah. But now this template is in the shared storage. vCenter can see this template as well in destination site. This VM will be added to the inventory. Meaning, this is called the multi-VC VM. Why? This VM, same files are here as well and here as well. In the source, in the form of template, in the destination, in the form of a virtual machine. Okay. So it's instant. It's no more export, import, right? So that's one thing. Now, if depending on the destination organization, whether it's fast provision or thin provision or non-fast provision, if the instantiation takes place, right? This virtual machine is registered in VC as a virtual machine, right? If it is fast provision, meaning I need to have a shadow copy in the destination data store, which could be any other data store. And from that shadow copy, I'll have one link load. And then my VM will be seen on the destination tenant side. If it's a non-fast provision organization in the destination, irrespective of whatever template I have, all the VMs are full clone.
Yeah.
Right. So this is how it is. So in short, we save a lot of time when we have to instantiate a template from different tenants, which are backed by different vCenter servers.
Yeah.
Almost, I would say 90 to 95% of the time will be saved in the background with this update, where if you just add one NFS shared storage between the vCenters, all the export import task would be eliminated completely.
Yeah.
Any questions here, you can ask me in case.
This just seems like a really kind of logical solution that should have been around a long time ago.
Long time.
Because
Right.
I mean, this is addressing like the hyper, the cross cloud and hybrid cloud environments
Correct.
that many customers
Correct.
exist in.
Correct.
And it's going to save a lot of time just with all of that automation that had to be written around OV export and import, but also the errors and tracing the problems that would happen with that.
Right.
Yeah, this seems like a really, really nice solution.
Right. So from a VCD perspective, again, this is something which you would not see in the front end, but there's a small feature flag in the admin setting where you can disable this feature or enable this feature. Okay.
Got it. Yeah.
Now we will look at the IOPS thing and the sync feature. So for the IOPS thing, very straightforward. That is, say for example, I'm in the tenant portal. I have my virtual machine. Okay, as a user, okay, if you have the access to see the storage policies, then you would see all of the capabilities. Okay, so for example, this storage IOPS policy has the capability of VC IOPS. This is not the feature, but I'll come to the feature now. Now, what we have enhanced is, say for example, I navigate to the virtual machine. For example, I have one IOPS VM which is already created. If I click on the hard drive of the VM, okay, this IOPS was okay. Two things to understand. One is an IOPS setting which comes from vCenter. Second, IOPS we can define at the VCD level.
Yeah.
At the VCD level, it's all the same. I can define, I can see in VCD. The enhancement here is I could not previously see what's defined in vCenter server. So now I have the capability to read that information and show it to you per disk. So now this virtual machine is sitting on a data store, which is having a vCenter server storage policy definition. Now I can see what's the IOPS limit and IOPS reservation. Previously, these two columns were one column as IOPS only. Now we have divided that into two: IOPS limit, IOPS reservation. Same applies for name disk. If you have a name disk which is sitting on a a vSphere based IOPS policy, you would be able to see the IOPS detail here as well. Okay, so this is one feature. Now, do not confuse this IOPS limit with the IOPS limit of the storage policy defined at the VCD level. This is the IOPS limit defined at the vCenter level. All right. Okay. So because we do have IOPS limit at the VCD level storage policies as well. So that they're two different things. Now, how they're controlling who can see these IOPS reservation and limit is based on a right. So if a user has the rights to see the IOPS, they would see. If they do not have, they would not see. For example, if I navigate to the administration section, and if I show you the roles, one of the roles, for example, let's take organization roles. There's a new rights called view disk IOPS. Only if that is enabled for the user is when they would see the IOPS reservation and IOPS limit of either vCenter server or of VCD. Okay, so they're controlling now. So this will take time. So I mean, okay, let's just another couple of seconds.
So previously, then you would have been able to define a IOPS policy that may have exceeded the vCenter allocation.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So that's the reason we had introduced the VCD IOPS configuration, where now, though it's defined XYZ in vCenter, I will override that and redefine in VCD, so that I have better control.
Yeah.
So this will eliminate that now. I mean, you can still have your VCD policies based on the requirement, but yeah, now you can see what's really defined at the VC level within the VCD portal. So you navigate to compute section, and if you expand org VDC, you see here view disk IOPS. This is the rights you have to enable for the user to be able to see the IOPS limits and reservation settings.
Right.
Now let's look at the catalog observability improvements. So in this environment, I have a couple of organizations. I will first navigate to the provider organization and show you what catalog I have, which is a publisher. Okay.
So this is for the catalog sync between the
Catalog
organizations.
sync,
Yeah.
what's happening in the background. Basically, the observability has changed, not
Yeah.
what was happening in the background.
Okay.
So in the libraries, I have the catalogs, and let's say, for example, this catalog generic OS is a published catalog. Okay, I have published this, and anyone can subscribe to this. So what I'll do, I will quickly copy the published settings of this so that I can subscribe to this. And copy this. Fine. Now I will navigate to, let's say, another organization where I want to subscribe this to. And now if I navigate to the catalog section of this tenant or organization, and let's say I create a new catalog, I give it demo, and then I want to subscribe to someone else. I do not have a password. And then I click OK. This demo catalog is in syncing state. You see here now at the bottom.
Yeah.
But this is the main task. This is the subtask. Okay. Now what will happen? This subtask will also have another subtask in a minute. You see here? You see this line? So that these are the subtasks I have, meaning this is what is happening and this is the percentage. But there's more to it. Now, if I click on the main task, previously we used to always get stuck in the screen with 1% and don't know what's happening. But now I can click on task steps and see what's happening. It finished initializing the library. It's now waiting for the publisher to download the files. In a couple of minutes, once the actual files are getting downloaded, I will see another tab over here stating this file is being copied at this percentage, this file at this percentage. So what I have to do for that, go back and reopen the task details window. So we'll wait for a couple of seconds. It should pop up pretty much.
Okay.
Now.
So this is going to help, like, with troubleshooting those catalogs.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah, all of the challenges and visibility, like you say.
See here now, active file transfers. It will show now I've copied the descriptor file. Then it will show the disk file, the VMX file, and so on. So with percentage.
Yeah.
And this feature, as I understand, will be enhanced further, wherein if a fail has happened at any particular file level, there could be a situation where we will support resuming it from that stage as well. So it will get better and better. But this is what we have enhanced quite a bit from an catalog sync observability perspective. So you know exactly what is happening. So this is the thing all about catalogs. All right. And then
again, pretty cool features. Yeah.
Very good feature. And trust me, those features, as I understood from while talking to the engineering, they were not straightforward thing to be introduced. But yeah, with a lot of challenges, we have made it through, and it works flawless.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Now we will look at some other updates from the release, wherein the first one is about the service account. I'll show that how to configure that in the lab, and then we have now combined the HTTP proxy and VM console proxy into one. It's not a mandate, but you have the option to combine them. I'll come to that. And then we have made migrations easier across data centers for the service providers. I'll show where the option is as well. And I will talk about these two here itself in the slides. So the major one of the updates we have done with 10.4 is now we have upgraded the appliance OS to Photon OS 3.0 from 2.0. Of course, it brings a lot of security and a lot of patchwork and all those general OS level updates.
Cool.
And then we have enhanced the restore option from a backup, where previously when I restore the backup of the appliance, okay, I used to get these options. Look at the bottom screen. I used to get the option, of course, to ask which backup location, which backup file. Previously, I only had the option to backup HTTP certificate and console proxy certificate. But now what I'm introducing here is I also have the option to now restore a Postgres database and management UI certificate. These options were not available before, but they were backed up, but no option to restore them.
Right.
And when I say the management UI certificate, it's basically an appliance certificate. So what will happen when you restore this backup, right? And if you check these boxes or this box in particular, the restored data set, the restored VCD appliance will have the certificates created with the destination IP address, SAN name, DNS addresses, and host name, which is taken care by VCD. So you do not have to worry about restoring it and then replacing certificate at a later stage. So it saves a lot of time when you have to restore an existing appliance. Okay.
Yeah.
And from the feature perspective, first I'll show you service account. By default, service account is a feature which is configurable by the org admin and a provider admin. So what this feature is all about, it is a feature where it will be used mostly in automations and APIs, where previously I'm sure you must have heard about the feature called API token. In API token,
we covered that.
So in API token, the feature was where as a user, I create the API token with my name. Okay, so any tool using the API token which I generated will show that so-and-so user has performed this task. So to avoid that, we have come up with an option called service account, which is configurable under administration service accounts section, where I can create one service account for a tenant, the real use case. Say, for example, I have one service account for a GCP customer. Okay, with this service account, when I create, it will generate a client ID. Now, the end customer will be given this client ID. So with this client ID, what will happen? The end customer will use the API tool to request for permission. So once the client requests for a permission, the client will get one device ID. That device ID has to be provided by the client to the provider. And once the device ID or the user access ID is given to the provider will then grant or deny the connection. Once it is granted is when the actual customer can use that specific service account details to use in the API tools for automation and stuff. Now, what's the advantage? It will not show who created this account. It will show the tenant's name, which we define over here as that this customer performed this task. This customer performed this task. So it's easy in auditing, easy in logging, easy in troubleshooting. Major reasons are those. So this is one enhancement, which is service account. And then what was the other one? Okay, console proxy and hardware swap. Previously, if you look over here, we used to always have, I mean, you don't see it now, but we used to always have one proxy for HTTP services and one proxy for VM console, where we used to give 8433 by default port number. Okay. So meaning we used to have multiple IP addresses, one for console proxy, one for your management, and separate proxy for this, separate proxy for the other one. And obviously they could be in separate networks and they used to have their own load balancer certificates and stuff, right? So now what we have done, we have combined the VM console proxy into the HTTP proxy. So both VM console and the management UI proxy basically will work from a single proxy. So advantages, you don't have to configure multiple load balancers for separate subnets, certificates, stuff like that. Now, there could be a question. I'm a customer who already have a large setup with multiple load balancer for console proxy, multiple load balancer certificates for HTTP. No worries. You can go ahead and disable this option and go back to the previous behavior. We are promoting this going forward. You might see these changes, change your environment accordingly with time.
Okay.
So there's a feature flag if I show you over here, which is You see here legacy console proxy. You can enable or disable that with as a customer. So that's one thing. And what was the other one? The other one was a big ask from the providers. Say, for example, as a provider, if I want to migrate the workload from, let's say, a data center which is getting deprecated to a new data center, what was the main requirement? Both data center needed to have a main or rather a shared storage between them for the workload to migrate. But now that's not the case. Say, for example, if I navigate to, I'm on the provider portal right now. If I click on the resource pools, and this is my resource pool, let's say I want to migrate this load. I have this option now, allow VMs to change data stores. This was not the case before. Okay, so meaning the enhancement here is that I do not need to have a shared storage between data centers anymore. It will go through your network management network or whatever you have the routing between them, right? It will take that network and do a faster copy. You will avoid basically the shared storage copy, and then it will go to destination and stuff, right? So you need not have a shared storage anymore across data centers. This is mostly a provider UI enhanceability, where the providers usually change data centers or resource pool for customers, or when they pull in more resources, they have to move some customers here and there, right? Ultimate example for them where they can now migrate workload without having a shared data store across any source and destination.
Is this so just Jay, just tell me if this is a kind of a normal setup. Most service providers, I believe, would have a shared storage system between sites for things like vMotion, high availability, that type of thing.
Yes.
But what we're saying here is if you haven't got it and you need to move VMs, then now this is now possible.
Correct. I mean, basically, if you want to move VMs from, let's say, resource pool 1 to resource pool 2, which are backed by, let's say, separate data stores or separate storages, you do not have to have a common shared storage between them. It is very much possible.
Okay.
Again, this is a manual task, not vMotion or not any AI stuff. This is a manual task which a provider would perform from the portal, and they know what they are doing, basically selecting the source and the destination.
Would it shut down the VM while it's migrating
this
the
will
disks?
not shut down the VM, no.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and what else? Okay, we do have 2 more updates which will be released in phases. The first one is a big relief again, I would say, to the customers. Previously, okay, in short, NSXT does not understand fencing because of the reverse ARP thing, right? So meaning any VApp or any VApp template which was fenced and captured as a template could not be restored on the NSXT backed network because NSXT does not support fencing. But now we have come up with various options. Basically, I would not talk about it in details because it will be released in phases. So in short, what you would see in the future with this release, starting with this release, that you can now have a NSXV backed fenced network migrated or instantiated to an NSXT backed data center or a OVDC, and that VApp would power on and do the task as it is. So that's one very good feature, again in phases. Other one, again a very nice feature, which is called the centralized proxy. Previously, this was only possible up to provider level, wherein a provider could proxy into vCenter, NSX, or I believe ESXi through VCD page. But now we are extending this feature to tenants as well. So advantages, as a tenant, I do not have to depend on the provider always to go and proxy my things. Now, as a org admin, I can proxy the connection to my VCD, NSX, ESXi without having or including the provider. So we're extending this feature.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's really nice.
Very nice.
I like that.
Feature,
yeah.
It'll be like I'll be self-service. I don't have to depend on the provider. I'll be like on my own as a tenant.
Yeah, particularly as we look at VCD providing these kind of this overlay into other environments, other clouds as well. I mean, that's going to save a lot of administration. Yeah,
a lot of administration. You're right. So these were some of the miscellaneous enhancement. Basically, whatever we've seen so far were all the updates in 10.4 from a VCD perspective. Like we discussed in the initial stage, We have two updates from an extensibility perspective. One is from a Terraform perspective, which is we are releasing Terraform 3.7, and I see the date is mentioned around July 28. Don't quote us if it's not releasing on that date. But yeah, so what enhancement this will bring? First, if you look at the first section, of course, it will support VCD 10.4, and it will do a lot of automation. And again, this is also in phases. As a part of release with this phase, with Terraform and Terraform 3.7 and VCD 10.4, we can now, with a single click through Terraforms, set up an entire CAC configuration and environment. So basically, with this, you'll have an environment where you're ready to go and spin up your Tanzu clusters directly. So it will install the CAC for you, connect CAC with VCD for you, configure CAC with VCD for you, download the templates from the respective websites, upload them to VCD, connect them with TKG, CAC, everything. It'll be basically one-click configuration, one-click deployment of Tanzu clusters.
And that's really cool. I mean, on the Feature Fridays I've done with Sashi around Container Service Extension, it's quite a lot of work to deploy CSE. True. So this will avoid all those errors and all that administration tasks.
Absolutely. In short, we are saving easily 12 to 15 steps, which is complex. Not really complex, but some steps can get complex.
Yeah, exactly.
And with Terraform and Terraform 3.7 with VCD 10.4, we also have a couple of networking updates, as we see that we will support automation or the configuration of BGP dynamic routing, security tags, etc., whatever we see on the screen, right? So these are the updates from Terraform perspective, from an extensibility perspective with VCD. And we are also coming up with VRA VCD adapter version 1.2, again releasing after a couple of weeks. And this adapter will be compatible with VRA 8.9. And again, this one has few improvements, few features. One of the features is it will support snapshot operation on the onboarded VM. It will now respect VCD's one snapshot limit consideration, which was failing before. And then, of course, it will now add the support for VRA proxy setup. So these major few features and enhancements we are coming up with VRA and VCD adapter.
Okay.
And that's it. So quickly, I'll go through the interoperability, which is a must. You must know, because before you upgrade, first thing you do is interoperability. Otherwise, some solutions might work, some might not work. And being from a GSS background in the early stage, half of the tickets were, this solution is not working with this release or this update. Did you check interoperability? No. So it's important to know interoperability. These are the products. These are the versions. Pause the video, look at them. Screen 1, screen 2 for other solutions, and screen 3 for the remaining solutions. So these are the ones we support from an interoperability perspective. And if you want to upgrade from a previous version, we do support for an embedded, or rather for the appliance, we do support from 10.2, 10.2.1, 10.2.2, 10.3 to 10.4. And if it's external, you see as it's mentioned on the screen, we support upgrade from so-and-so versions. Lastly, we have introduced a new API version in 10.4, which is 37. So going forward, you can use this API version. Make sure we are deprecating some older versions. So if your script still uses those older versions, make sure that with 10.4, they will not work, which is 35.2, 35, 34.2, and 34.1. Okay. So these API versions will not function. So, and this goes with all the previous VCD supported version as well. We are deprecating older versions of API. So make sure that you migrate to the newer API, and then you have your setup still working and not failing with an API error. So that's it. We had and a lot of features, enhancements, and some are really, really cool features which will really help service providers and the tenants.
Yeah, Jay, thank you for running through that. I mean, for me, the big ones, the big take homes there are the advanced load balancing integration, the new licensing. That's going to really remove that roadblock completely. The catalog sync, I can see that being really important as well. And a few really great operational solutions, and obviously setting the foundations for CSE.next with full TKGS, TKGM support with NVIDIA as well. So you can restart working on those AI, ML, or VDI solutions through Cloud Director.
Right.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Jay, thank you so much. I really appreciate you putting together the demos today and walking us through the 10.4 update. I hope our partners appreciate what 10.4 can do, and go download it, give it a trial. As Jay said, make sure you check the Interop. That's really important. If you're using any of the APIs, we maintain 3 or 4 versions, typically backward compatibility. There is a new API with this, so it means the 10.3.3 was quite compatible with actually more than that, but that's now substantially reduced. So if you're an ecosystem partner, or if you've got any integration at all with extensions, make sure you check the API. Jay, thank you very much, mate. Take care.
Thank you, Kai. Thanks for having me. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.